like to welcome everybody to the April meeting of the Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Commission. At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. As always, we'll start our meeting with the prayer and pledge of allegiance, and Dr. Bonner's agreed to lead us with that. Gloria.
Thank you. May we pray. Dear Father in heaven, we thank you for this beautiful day and for the privilege of prayer in a country that values our freedom. We ask a special blessing for those that serve on this commission and the others that are in our midst and their families. Father, may your face radiate upon us and be gracious to us. Grant us your divine favor and your everlasting peace. In your Son, Jesus' name, we ask these blessings and others. Amen.
Amen.
May we stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Gloria. Everybody should have received their packet earlier in the week that Mitzi had prepared, and contained in that packet was the minutes from our February meeting. At this time, we'll take any changes or corrections that need to be made to the minutes. If there are none, I'll entertain a motion for acceptance.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. Thanks, Mitzi. We'll move now to new business. We've got a lot on the agenda today, and we'll start it off by bringing Thomas Laird up here to give us an introduction of a new director for the Murfreesboro Tennis Association. Thomas, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me today, and I was hoping that we would be able to bring Carl Davies up. He is the new director of tennis for the Murfreesboro Tennis Association, but he got a unique opportunity to participate in some training through the International Tennis Federation in Hong Kong, so you can't blame him for going and participating in that. But I did want to update you on a couple of our leagues, and all of our leagues in Murfreesboro are progressing, focusing on developing players and providing opportunities for our citizens that are above and beyond anything else we've done. The Murfreesboro Tennis Association has contracted with Carl Davies to oversee tennis operations in terms of leagues and clinics and lessons. And this is something that we've really missed out on in the past. We've had several instructors that taught out at Old Foot Park and worked through the Murfreesboro Tennis Association, but they've never had a director of tennis to oversee all of that. Mr. Davies played professional tennis. He's from Great Britain and played professional tennis for many years, but as a individual self-sponsored tennis player, he found it much more productive and better suited for his career to become an instructor. So he started a program in South Africa. He also has started tennis programs in Australia and here in the United States. He is the highest level of instructor through the International Tennis Federation, who oversees organizations like the USTA, the United States Tennis Association. So he's very well educated, and what is unique in him, he brings something to every level, from youth, high school, and senior level tennis. So we're really pleased to have him, and the way that that's worked is similar to what's happened in many years past. All of the tennis instruction works under the MTA. MTA would pay those instructors out of that. The city gets 15% of all instruction through the professional service agreements that we have, and we typically have that across the board, from karate classes to aerobics classes, anytime an instructor comes in to teach some sort of specialty class. So we're very proud to have Mr. Davies, and once he gets back in country, hopefully in the next month or so, we can bring him in to meet you, the commission. I know he was looking forward to that. Also wanted to update you, the Murfreesboro Soccer Association is moving forward as well. They narrowed down to 3 candidates for a director of soccer. Soccer instruction and private lessons has become as popular as tennis now, and we are in efforts with the Murfreesboro Soccer Club to put the pieces in place to run it similar to our tennis program. At the tennis courts, if you go out and police officer sees an individual teaching tennis, our park officers are trained to look for identification. Approved instructors have a card that we make within our department. It's a photo ID. It says they're approved tennis instructor. If they do not have that card, then they're a violation of city policy, and the police officers ask them to leave. We have had a few occasions where legal department has had to get involved, and we've had to send out a letter particularly, but never an incident, and it's worked really, really well. It helps Murfreesboro Tennis Association monitor the lessons and the times and the demands. It also makes sure that everyone is following city policy. So that's where we're going with soccer as well. There's several individuals that do training, agility training, as well as foot skills training, and they're highly qualified coaches. They're generally part of MSC, belong to the U.S. Youth Soccer Association, but they're not following city policy. So we're in the works to get that going. Are there any questions on our leagues and where we're going in terms of private instruction?
Any questions for Thomas? Thomas, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Nate Williams is up next. He's going to talk to us about a consideration of dedicating the tractor shed at Cannonsburg Village.
Yeah, thank you for having me today. I bring before you today one of our most visited features at Cannonsburg Village is our tractor shed. It has been for many years. Late last year, it was reconstructed after irreparable damages that took place a few years ago on the original tractor shed. So now we have a newly renovated tractor shed. It's added to the feature. We have over 30 tractors that range from 1920 to 1950 in the tractor shed. They're on display. People come from all over to look at the tractors, to look up close, get kind of an up-close view, take pictures with, and I think reflect a lot on their childhood a lot of times, some of these people who really enjoy the tractors. A little bit of history. In the early 80s, Dr. Omri Rollins was agribusiness professor at MTSU. He really led the effort to make this happen. He and Fred Trujillo built the first tractor shed at Cannonsburg in 1980. Or I think 1981 is when it was built. In 1982, they started bringing in the tractors. Ever since then, we've brought in more and more tractors to, like I said, now we have a large collection of over 30 tractors. It's one of our greatest features. Dr. Rollins is in his 80s now, and he's actively involved. Every week we end up talking to him about the tractors, and he makes sure to help us keep those maintained and gives us advice and direction. But he played a very crucial role in gaining this aspect of Cannonsburg Village and maintaining it since then. We appreciate that very much. It's been our intention to hopefully name the tractor shed at Cannonsburg Village Rollins Tractor Shed. This falls in line with most of the other buildings at Cannonsburg. I think we've got 9 other buildings that are named after individuals who played a big part in getting that building there, the origination of the buildings. So I could run down that list if you'd like me to, but what we're looking at today is I'm asking that you approve our recommendation to City Council that we name the Cannonsburg Tractor Shed Rollins Tractor Shed. What we would like to do is have an unveiling at Pioneer Days this year, which is April 27th at noon, with Dr. Rollins and his family there. The total cost for this would be $2,425. That includes a sign for the tractor shed that just says Rollins Tractor Shed. I think you have that in your packet. Then also a small wayside exhibit that titles it and then also gives a little detail behind the tractors that are there. So I think this is very appropriate. I think it adds to the feature of Cannonsburg, and it's, like I said, a much discussed feature of the facility, and we're glad to have it. So I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have regarding the history or anything. But other than that, I'll
Any questions of Nate regarding this request?
Mr. Chairman, I've got a question, maybe not necessarily for Nate, maybe for our legal, maybe for Lanny. It seems like to me several months ago we discussed a particular policy that we would have about naming certain things along our parks, and that we would try to comply with, or develop a policy, or to at least come up with something to, in the event of someone just like this coming up, and making sure that it would be named after somebody appropriately. And I just got a question about that.
The policy that we adopted recently dealt with people making donations to the Parks and Rec Department, and dealt with accepting donations. This is different because it's not a donation that the city built this shed and we're looking at naming the shed after someone. I have researched if the city had a policy in place on naming city facilities, and the typical practice has been that staff would recommend names, or a committee would be formed to determine who to name something after, and then that would be presented to the relevant commission and then on to city council for approval.
So we have had a committee that studied this particular naming and found no problems with it?
What we did, Mr. Tips, is in-house, we got together as a staff. We looked at really who brought the tractors there, who went out and made the donations, who got the donations of the tractors, and that was Mr. Rollins. I mean, that was his effort. There wouldn't be anyone else that we would think that would be deserving of that. And he's worked very hard. I know when we were building the shed, he was there pretty much every day. And before we built the shed, in the interim, when we tore it down, and he actually came down and tore down, I think, the first one himself with some other folks, because he was worried about the tractor. So, you know, from that 1980, he's been engaged in that. So we just think it's appropriate for staff to come and recommend that to the commission.
Thank you.
That's a good point. Any other questions? If there are none, we need a motion for approval of this consideration as presented.
I move to approve.
I'll second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Hey, thanks. Good work. Terry Womack, you're up. Terry's actually got two items. The next two items under new business. Terry's going to talk to us about a consideration of fee change for the Sunshine Players Dinner Theater and give us an update on Arts in the Park. Terry, welcome.
Thanks. The Sunshine Players has been in existence since 1989. We've done anywhere from 1 to 6 plays a year with children ages 4 to 17. And we thought since we had really good facilities at Patterson that we might try doing a dinner theater. So we selected a show that had a smaller cast in it that would accommodate putting us on a built-up stage in the dining room and serve dinner with it. Normally our tickets are $7.50 for adults, $6 for kids or senior citizens, and $3 for our members. So what we're proposing is that we tack on some money to accommodate the cost of dinner. So an adult ticket would be $15, a senior ticket would be $12, and a member's ticket would be $8. So that adds anywhere from $5 to $7.50 for their meal. We will be selling tickets at the door beginning at 1/4 for people who didn't want to eat, so they can still see the show at the $7.50, the $6, or the $3. So Friday and Saturday night are dinners. And then Sunday, we thought it would be too late to try to eat dinner at 2 o'clock, and at 1 o'clock makes it hard to do because the building's not open till 1. So we lessen the prices. We'll have a wide variety of desserts and coffee and tea and punch and stuff for that show. And we do realize it's Mother's Day, but when you're trying to plan plays 2 years in advance, you hit the best dates you can for the spaces you have available. So I'd like to, I guess, ask y'all's consideration that you approve us selling dinner tickets at this price.
Anybody have any questions for Terry regarding this?
Terry, this is the first time we've had the dinner theater.
We did a dinner theater back when McKnight Park first opened called Hot Dog Theater, and you got a hot dog and a show for like $7 or something. But the show was so short that they finished the show before I got the hot dogs cooked. So that was not a good experience there. But we have a caterer for this, and we think, for $7.50 you're getting pork tenderloin, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls, dessert, and salads. I think that's pretty good for $7.50, to eat off of. So I don't have to cook this. So.
Sounds great.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval
Okay.
of this as presented.
I second
Have a
that.
motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank
Terry,
you.
tell us about Arts in the Park.
Okay, Arts in the Park, We started back in 1988. Actually, we started it at 4th of July because we had to be out there for the concert and stuff, and people were getting in early. So we just took a bunch of art supplies and we just started doing art activities at 4th of July. Well, we got a good reception, so we just scheduled other dates in the summer that we would go to the park with a bunch of supplies and grab kids off the street pretty much and say, come play with us. The last couple of times we've done it, we've been out at Cason Lane, we've been at Barfield, we've been at Old Fort. We asked that parents help the 7 and unders because we are using scissors and glue and stuff like that. Well, next thing you know, the parents are making something, and they're having as much fun as their child is. So it's just a chance for people to come out and just play with arts and crafts supplies and make the mess on our time, and we'll clean it up, and you don't have to. And then we can also talk about other programs we have with the recreation department. So this year we proposed that all of them happen at Old Fort in Pavilion 3 next to the Kids Castle, where we think there'll be a lot of traffic. They're from 9 to 12. It's kind of a come in, make something, take it with you kind of deal. So you don't have to stay unless you want to. We'll be there for 3 hours. If you want to stay for 3 hours and make something or make a bunch of something, that's okay too. But I have 2 other staff members to help me. We think we'd be able to offer a variety of things from painting and drawing to cutting and gluing and things like that. So.
Anybody have any questions of Terry about the arts in the park? Terry, thank you for being
Okay, I
here.
expect you to come out, make something.
Eddie will be there all 3 hours. She's very crafty.
You be there, Ed?
I am crafty, I'll be there.
Okay, thanks.
Bart Fight's with us today. Bart's going to talk about a consideration of fee change for the cabana rentals at the Borough Beach.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, what I'm coming to you today about is a proposal for our changing our cabana fees that we have out at Borough Beach at our outdoor pool. As you know, we have 2 cabanas out there, and last season what we did, we charged $30 for 3-hour intervals, and then we charged $3 per child or $4 per adult to come in to the cabana for their private party during those 3 hours. What happened was sometimes we would have the person giving the party come in, and a brother, sister, or something would bring their kids to the party 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, and it got to be quite hectic, taking them back there, getting them, showing them the directions, how to get back there to the cabanas. So what we've done, we want to propose a change, and basically it's going to be the same amount of money, but it's going to streamline and bring into effect our other rentals at our facilities, where the people come in and they would pay a flat fee up front, which would be $100 plus tax, and they would receive 25 wristbands for their guests. Both our cabanas have a maximum capacity of 25. What they would do is pay their $100, and that would include their 3-hour rental plus the 25 wristbands. That way, when, for example, Miss Smith comes in and rents the cabana, we'd have the 25 wristbands there, ready to give to her to give out to the people that were attending the party. Last year, we roughly had around 52 rentals in our cabanas. We have, of course, 2 out there, and really it's that just for June and July. As you know, in August, first or second week of August, school starts back, it starts slowing down. So we were fairly busy, but this will streamline our way to even collect the revenues and also keep up with the revenues, where they come in, pay up front the $100 plus tax, where they would be around $110, where they will receive their 25 wristbands, and make it easier on our front desk. And like I said, keeping up with the revenues instead of charging the $3 per child when they came in like they did last year separately from the person that's having the party. So we think this would be a great way to streamline it and keep it in effect as our other rentals at our facilities.
Thanks, Bart. Does anybody have any questions of Bart regarding the requested change? If there are no questions, we need a motion for approval.
Move for approval. Approval, please.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. It's approved, Bart. Thanks for being here, man. Good work. Going to turn it over to Lanny now. Lanny's going to talk to us about an engineering services contract for the West Park. Lanny?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I do have before you today consideration for an engineering contract to start the first phase of the search, I guess you would say, for land for the West Park. Just to give you a little background, back in November, we put out a request for proposals, which was also put the qualifications in there. We had 5 proposals turned in. We had a team made up of Mr. Crumley, our Assistant City Manager, Ms. Shannon Logan, our Service Excellence Coordinator, Mr. Tracy Wilkins, who is our Golf Director, Angela Jackson, and myself, that evaluated and interviewed a couple of these firms. And after doing so, it was our recommendation that we move forward with the firm of Kimberly Horn and Associates. I've got the partners listed here, Huddleston Steel, and Mr. Bill Huddleston is here representing Huddleston Steel. Weiser Company Incorporated, Mr. Jim Kerr is here representing Weiser Company. Griggs and Maloney, Mr. Steve Maloney is here representing Stephen Griggs and Maloney. And then Gregory Peck and Associates, if we get into land appraisals, that is their expertise. Dennis Griffith and Associates was the golf expert, and there was a portion of this that you will see in the RFP that was included for golf, but what we're considering today is only the park portion. And then site design was really skate park experts that was put in there. If you look at what we've done, what we did is we actually said we wanted to look at the park in 3 different phases. The first phase, because we have no land at this point, is to look at, is there possible land in the western portion of the city where a park could be located? Because one of the things that we've always found is that the development of the park is contingent upon the land conditions. And I think we have a distinct advantage in this regard because, and I'll give you an example, when we had the land that Siegel donated, which was a great donation. But what happened is when we started the development of the land, the first thing we found is there was 6 active wetlands on the site that we had to mitigate. And then we had to run electrical about a half a mile down the road to get power to the site. We had to rebuild the lift station for the sewer. And you know that it was a small 2-lane road, Cherry Lane. We expanded that to a 4-lane. So there was a lot of infrastructure that was done prior to even starting the park. So I think the distinct advantage here is the fact that when we start assessing the land, we can start looking at some of those elements as well and saying, you know, how can we reduce cost? I know just one thing within what they're doing at the schools, one test that they did saved a considerable amount of money on design. And so we have the distinct advantage to do that up front. But what we wanted to do is, and what we told the council that we would do when we presented this, is we would bring this a piece at a time so that we could consider the first part. The first part is to see if there's land available. The proposal that we have from Kimberly Horn, what it will do is meet with us, determine what the city really is kind of looking for in terms of description of land. They will put a request for proposals together. They will make those packages available. We'll advertise. People will be able to pick those up. And then Kimberly Horn will evaluate, an independent third party to evaluate and say what they think would be a good fit for what we're looking for and would hold the infrastructure cost and other things down for the development of the park. At that point, we're back to a decision. Where do we need to go? Do we need to just stop? Is there land available? Has people given us an opportunity to say that we'd love to have a park out here like Mr. Siegel, and say we'd like to have something dedicated in our name, we're willing to donate a part if you'll buy a part? Or is there something else that, we don't know that. And we can't really tell you what's going to go in the park because we don't have the land. So, it's the beginning of a process is really what I'm trying to get at. And they've offered to do this service for $24,500 in our CIP program for 2012. We have 14 projects in there, this being one of them. 11 of our projects are renovation of existing facilities. This would be one of the new projects that we have. We have $720,000 set aside for architectural engineering services if we go further into the plan. But right now, where we're at is just seeing if land is available, bringing those in, evaluating those sites, and seeing where we're at. Just to give you some more background, I did include for you the request for proposals that the firms received. You can see on page 2, I guess you would say kind of first level planning. What we did as a staff is went in and looked at where our parks were located within our city, looked at our urban growth boundary, looked at the city limits, and determined where the city was growing, where we were lacking in park facilities, and that's where it landed. It landed right there in the western portion of the city. If you look on page 3 of that proposal, you'll see where we called out for the 3 phases. And you can see where the first phase says refine the scope of plan criteria and aid the city in developing the documents to seek land proposals for the public. And so that is what I have for you today. If you go deeper into the packet that I have for you, you can find the Exhibit A from Kimberly Horn, which outlines exactly those tasks, with Task 1 being the meetings, the kickoff, Task 2 preparing the acquisition for requests for proposals, and then we would stop at Task 3 and evaluate where we would be before we would go on into anything into Task 3. And of course, they have given us an hourly schedule for anything that we would like to see there. Also, I've included out of one of our surveys, each year we try to do a customer service satisfaction survey. The one in 2009, 2010, when we started considering if we needed additional facilities or additional parks. These are comments. These are unsolicited comments that were in that. There's 2.5 pages of them, and all of them refer to wanting something that would be related to that park. Also, we put some information in here for you on our athletics. In just a few minutes, I'll get Mr. Thomas Laird to come up, speak in regards to the athletics, but Thomas has done a great job in showing exactly where we're at number-wise, the number of fields that we have, where we're playing. We've also given you a breakout of some of the active, I would call, facilities, where we are and how they are compared to national standards. And if you look at the land, you can see where it looks like we're probably okay with land, but I put an asterisk there because generally speaking, what they're looking at is developable land, lands that you could build ball fields or tennis courts or so forth on. We have 300 acres of wilderness at Barfield. We have 80 acres that we count in our wetlands. And then we have about 125 acres of land that we count for the Greenway, which is a corridor. If you take those out, that puts it at 595. of developable land. So that would be well below. But then if you start looking where we'll be in 2015, which is only 2 years away, national standards would be 239 acres below, and then in 7 years, in 2020, based on census projections, would be 479 acres below. We did go to the census tract, and we looked at what is called the 409 census area, which is the west portion of the city. It was kind of really eye-opening when you look at that. In 7 years, we're going to be probably 50,000 people just in that particular area. And it made me think that, you know, when I looked at the national data, we were 23 baseball, softball fields down. I know it was 2,000 when we built our last. The population of Murfreesboro at that time was just about 68,000. We've grown 40,000 since we built Barfield, and if you compare that, comparatively speaking, that's bigger than the town of Smyrna. Smyrna's just 39,000, I think 974 when I looked at the population of Smyrna. So you have to think we've grown as Smyrna, and most of it's been in the western portion of the city. The assessment that we did that is included in your packet, what we did is we didn't look just for what would be in the western portion of the city. We looked department-wide. We said, you know, really, where are we short? Where do we need to look at? What are some of the common things that when we build parks, people ask for? When we built Siegel Park. And we always go through a very extensive public input, citizen engagement with council, the commission. One of the things that we were told right up front very quick, and people that were involved with that will remember, the citizens that lived around there said, you can't build just a soccer park here. We can't have a park across the street that doesn't have something, you know, that our kids can go play on, or we can have, you know, a picnic over there or something. So we added the community element into that park, and you notice we've got playgrounds and other things, and we put in walking paths and connected walkways. Really is kind of what we did, and kind of re-engineered that whole park. So that is what happens when we engage folks in that process. And so we've included that assessment. It could look like that. It may not. I mean, right now, you don't know what the land's going to look like. We don't know if we'll have some wooded area. We don't know if it'll all be flat cornfields. We don't know if it'll be 50 acres or 100 acres or 250 acres. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you. And go to the next part, which is I'd like for Mr. Crumley, he's here, our Assistant City Manager, to come forward. And Jim I asked him to come and really kind of share information about the capital improvements process that the city goes through, to talk about the financial policies that the city has and how they judge what level they borrow at for capital improvement projects, and really where we stand as a city. So, Mr. Crumley, if you could do that.
Thank you, Chairman and Board. This is probably going to be repetitive for our two city councilmen who are on the board, and for Dr. Gilbert also. But just a brief description of how the city sets about a long-term plan for capital growth in projects such as the West Park, and how we finance that plan. It all begins with financial policies that City Council adopted in the fall of 2010. Those financial policies dictate that the capital improvement plan, a 5-year document projecting needs for large dollar expenditures, becomes the basis for all borrowing and all other financial transactions involving the city. Each year, generally in the early spring, we sit down with City Council, review that 5-year financial plan. They adopt it or they choose not to adopt it, modify it, change it. Each year, the department heads go through it and update the numbers in that plan so that the numbers stay fresh even though they may be 5 years on the horizon. The current capital plan approved by the City Council has a $20 million placeholder for the West Park in the calendar year 2015. That will be potentially modified as City Council considers the next improvement plan sometime early 2014. To give you some perspective about how fast, how many dollars, how large the city's debt position is, the city has, in this financial policy document, set 4 particular guidelines that the credit rating agencies gauge all cities across the nation by to determine what rating, what credit worthiness they're going to assign to Murfreesboro. Currently, the city is well within all 4 of those policy guidelines that City Council determined in 2010. One of those peculiar things about debt in Murfreesboro is how quickly we choose to repay it. All of the city's debt is on a 15-year basis. That's much more rapid than you find other communities across the state and nation. Put into dollar terms, what that means is that the city pays off between $25 and $26 million in principal every year. If we were to just borrow $25 million every year going forward, our debt position doesn't really change. The total dollars in debt for the city remain constant. We're a little better than that. The city went through a tremendous growth spurt, 1999, 2000, 2001. There were a lot of borrowings in those years. In calendar year 2015, we know that the city pays off debt that will relieve annual payments of about $5.8 million a year. In 2016, that's another $1.6 million that rolls off that annual principal and interest cost. In 2017, there's another $1 million in that same type of roll-off of principal and interest. Now, how does that fit into the West Park project? You still have to have current income in your pocket if you're going to borrow new money and pay that back. I wish I could tell you that our 2014 budget that we're working on right now was so glowing that that's not a consideration. That is not the case. We're going to struggle to put a good budget in front of City Council for this next year. Knowing that, as staff begins to modify that capital improvement plan in early 2014, it's doubtful in my mind that we'll be able to keep that $20 million for West Park in that 2015 budget year. I would love to think that we could find a way to keep the money in there to purchase the real estate, to secure the land that the park would eventually be constructed on. But I think it's very doubtful that we can maintain that full $20 million placeholder that was originally set for the West Park. I know that's been quick. I hope I didn't confuse you with too many numbers and too many of the city's financial policies. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody have any questions for Jim?
Jim, what is the actual city's debt right now?
June the 30th, 2013, the city of Murfreesboro will owe $218 million against its property tax base. For real estate taxation, the value that the assessor has set on Murfreesboro is just shy of $4 billion. $4 billion real estate value, the city owes about $218 million on its assets. That's one thing about the city's debt is there's an asset that stands pretty much behind each dollar of that debt, whether it's a public school, a highway, or a park.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions?
Jim, also, how have we performed in the last year as far as what we projected we would make and what we've actually taken in?
Income for the budget year?
Yes.
As it stands right now, our best estimate is that we will be in the black for the general fund for fiscal year 2013, year that ends June 30th of this year. There's only been 1 year in the past 10 that the city has had to dip into its reserves to balance its operating budget at the end of the year, and that was fiscal year 2011. With the economy pretty much still in some sort of not progressive state, we wound up having to dip into the reserves about $800,000 to close that fiscal year. Now, the city's reserves stand at about $45 million currently. And while we never want to dip into those reserves to balance up an operating year, that's one of the reasons that we carry that kind of balance, is that when the economy does go south, city services need to continue being offered. We've got the financial strength to dip in there and make good decisions, hopefully, about how those dollars are used to plug the gaps. Next year, we're hoping that we'll present a budget to City Council that will be very similar to the current year's budget. We're planning on trying to put together a budget that would treat our employees fairly, both in compensation and in the benefits. Probably not a lot of growth beyond that. Probably very few, if any, new headcount. Not a terrible year for capital, but not a great year for capital in the operating budgets.
Thanks, John. Good questions.
Before Mr. Crumley leaves, thank you, Mr. Crumley, for coming. We had that discussion earlier, and the reason that I wanted him to come is I knew that could be a question, the financial portion, and I'll just tell you this story, and you've heard me say this, I think, before. In 1970, the City Council was facing pretty much the same thing. They knew that there was going to be some growth in the city, and they went out to McKnight Park and bought the old McKnight farm. It was 152, 153 acres. Everybody, you go back and look at the notes, wonder why in the world they were going that far out into the city and buying property, and they went ahead and did it. Got part of it paid for through a grant. But you know where McKnight Park is now? It was 7 years after they bought the property before the Forefield was built. It was 16 years later they built Sportscom, and it was 25 years later when they built the Starplex. So the land was available, and I think that's what Jim is trying to say. Maybe we can get, if we go this route, and we can acquire the land, because number one, we know that that area is slated for development. We see all the schools that are going into that area, and we know that the parkland drives the development in certain areas in what it does. And so we think it's prudent to go ahead, start to search, look what we need to do for the land. We know that we have a need, and maybe go ahead and acquire the land. Many of our parks that we have done, that I've been involved with since I've been in Murfreesboro, and this is starting my 25th year, we've done in phases. And we've set and decided as a commission and a council and as citizens of Murfreesboro which one of those were the most important, and let's go ahead and build those now, and let's stretch that debt that Jim's talking about over a certain time, and we may skip a year or two as we keep developing the park, but the land gives us the opportunity to do that.
I think Dr. Gilbert knows how difficult it was to find the site for the new West School. I don't envy those who may have the challenge to work on finding the land for a future park on the west side. It sounds easy, and it's not.
And it will get more difficult.
Malin?
First of all, I'd like to start out by commending the committee. Seems like you all have done a fabulous job. And I know a lot of work goes into a big project like this, because I've been on some committees with big projects, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of research. I guess coming from the standpoint of being on the council, it's just like running a household. With me and my son, a lot of things he wanted, but our budget would not allow that. Right now, and I don't want to sound like the bad guy, I'm just throwing out some things for us to think about. The city right now, we're already in $218 million in debt. And when we put this in our capital improvement plan, we made a little twist, a little different twist than we ever made since I've been on the council. Last year, our capital improvement plan, we voted to take item by item what projects we were going to work on. And this hasn't come before the council as a project yet. So it's a little bit like taking the cart before the horse. I can see that a little bit, but I can see a lot more pressing needs right now in our community. We need a lot of sidewalks. We're having problems with sinkholes now that seems like cropping up every week. I just don't see, and I don't want to be the bad lady here, but right now with our budget, I just don't see our budget being able to handle this right now. We just don't have the money. We are anticipating, which we always do. When I was working, I was anticipating every year a raise. But we're scuffling right now trying to give the employees a little something extra. And it's not in the budget, and it hasn't come before the council. And for our committee to act on this without coming before the council, knowing that we don't have the money, seems like we're taking the cart before the horse. I am for the park. I don't want anyone to misunderstand me on that, but we just don't have the funds. And here again, I'm coming from a standpoint where I see the budget, where, you know, we have an advantage, Ed and I and you, Jim, we see the budget, and I just don't see us having the money. And to go and borrow more money, and if we say we're just looking at land right now, but to me that's kind of a teaser with taxpayers' money. If we don't have the money, okay, let's say we get a great deal on the land, we go ahead and purchase the land, but we don't have money to even start the project. I'm not saying I'm against it because I am for the park, but I'm just saying right now we just don't have the funds to even move forward from what I can see.
Well,
as a council.
The process is typically the advisory committees have considered these types of issues first before they would come to City Council. With your all's recommendation, the item before you today on the contract to employ consultants to work with finding the real estate would come to the next council agenda for City Council's consideration. And obviously, you all are the ones who have to spend the money and would eventually have a voice in how that occurs. The $20 million placeholder in the next CIP, the CIP that would be borrowed in early 2015, is something I think that when you look at it in the broad scope is affordable. The roads, the schools, the comprehensiveness of the CIP gives you all as decision makers the chance to review all the various projects that the city departments have laid out and make your decisions and set priorities among those projects. And at the time we presented it, I guess that was in January or February, the parks projects, particularly the new West Park, was a very significant component of the CIP. From memory, roads were about 40 to 50% of the total in that CIP. Schools, about another 20 to 25% of that CIP. And I want to say parks were in the 15% range in terms of all the money that was programmed in that 5 years of potential. The good news is City Council sits and evaluates that priority list of projects each and every year. That's a 1 year at a time decision about what projects come forward, what projects get pushed back, what projects may get deferred. And that opportunity has not gone away. That's still present. Before dollars would be borrowed to purchase real estate, another CIP would be back in front of City Council, and that decision would come forward to you all again in terms of, can we afford it? Should we wait? Are real estate prices going faster than typical so that we need to jump now? All of those things will be back and for you in a decision package, January, February timeframe.
the point I was trying to make. See, this hasn't even come before the council to even talk about moving forward with the park. Lanny made a...
The funding for
Yeah,
the consultants is in Laney's current budget.
Yeah, it's
Right,
it's
but
in
I'm
there.
saying as far as the project for the park itself has not been approved by the council. And Lanny, you made a very, very interesting point. I wasn't aware that we were growing that fast. The west side of our city is larger than Smyrna. And that's that in
It really
itself
hits you
shows we
when you
do
think
need,
about it.
you know, but,
Well, and Ms. Scales Harris, what we did in the CIP is we talked about the West Park, and we said in there, and I outlined those 3 phases, that we didn't have the land, and we wanted to go forward looking for the land, and so that's why we put the engineering. The engineering money is in the 2012. There's $700-something thousand in there. We're asking to spend $24.5 right now to do that first part, and then look at it and see where we're at, and then move forward if we need to, so we can make those evaluations. So when it comes up to the next CIP, we can set and say, do we want to move forward? Is this where we really need to position ourselves at this point or not? So that was the process that I had outlined.
right, in the
During
CIP, the last one we voted on, we have in there $720 million set aside, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there
I see
is.
so many numbers, but I think that's about what we have.
Eddie had something he wanted to say, and then Tim's after Eddie.
Lanny, I'll direct these comments towards you.
Okay.
The concern that I've got, and certainly I think you're doing a wonderful job as our director of Parks and Rec, and
Well,
I'm
thank
not
you.
meaning this in a derogatory sense, but I think your concern is to provide everybody with as nice a parks as you possibly can, and to do it in a reasonable fashion. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think you're doing a good job of that. At the same time, and Ms. Scales and myself, we've got trouble differentiating ourselves sometimes as council members and board members on this board, because we know information that maybe everybody on the board isn't privy to. And so my concern is not so much the price of the study, because the study, it is what it is. It's $24,500. That we can afford in the budget. The problem is if you go beyond that stage, we start buying land and stuff, then we're talking about spending money that we really can't afford to spend right now, in my feeling, with the budget that we currently have. We're not really looking at, once the park's built, either the maintenance and upkeep, which is kind of where we're at with the Greenway Pond right now, or the Gateway Pond. We're in a situation that the number keeps growing as far as trying to fill the sinkhole or the dropouts or the whatever it is that's taking place out there, and we're still not sure yet. But so I'm concerned with the city's debt. There will always be an outskirts of town, and I understand what you're saying about, you need to get property as soon as you can, but until we bump into Smyrna, or until we bump into whatever's in the other direction, Shelbyville or whatever, there will always be an outskirts. There will always be an edge of town that we can grow to. Some of my concern is with the duplication of services that we have within this presentation that you've presented. Certainly, the walking trails that you've presented, well, we already have walking trails in Murfreesboro. We're looking at baseball parks. There's a national study that probably says that we don't have enough baseball parks, and I wouldn't question it. But then again, I'm sure that same study would say that we were short on hockey rinks too, because we have none. But at the same time, those things are expensive, and they're all very expensive, and we have to be completely considerate when I can't break myself away from being concerned about the tax money and the tax dollars that are going to be spent on this project. As far as the area available, the city owns a great deal of property out on Medical Center Parkway right now that people often question me. Why does the city continue to hold this property? Why don't they sell it and get rid of it? Well, I think there is a plan, but sometimes when you acquire land, we kind of wind up with it, and for some reason, we either can't get rid of it or we don't know what to do with it. And when the city owns land, it generates no revenue whatsoever. It's not like if a farmer owns it and he pays taxes and property taxes, or if a business owns it and they're paying business taxes on it, or it's residential property and you pay your property tax. When the city buys the property, it becomes revenue neutral for us. So we really don't generate anything off of that property. So I'm concerned with the city going out and taking possession of property that will not only cost us money, but it will prevent us from taking in money. I've got a concern about the employees and the maintenance and upkeep of the property because I don't think we're looking at that in the budget at all. The walking trails and stuff, and my concern's the same with this as it would be with the Greenway system. You know, I was riding by Mitchell Nelson Elementary School between it and the primary on Jones Boulevard on the way over this afternoon. And I'm looking at the side of the road where kids walk daily to and from school, and we don't have sidewalks. And again, I think it's a priority issue of, you know, we've got so many places in Murfreesboro, especially in the inner city part, where we say, well, we're going to add more greenway, or we're going to add more trail, or we're going to add more exercise facilities, where we're not really taking care of the inner city and making sure that there's sidewalks so the kids can walk safely to school, or if their parents want to get out and walk the dog in the afternoon, walk safely around their neighborhoods. And so if we've got the money in the city to build this park, I wish we would take that money and do something to help the inner city part that has no sidewalks. I know with our new developments we're building sidewalks, but we're way behind on that. I've also got a concern with the fact that there's golf involved with this. There's a skating rink involved with it, or a skate park. And those things are in direct competition with the private sector. And it's very difficult when you're in the private sector to compete when the government's trying to compete in the same business you are. And because when we run a park or we run a golf course in the city, it's run on the basis of it really doesn't have to make money. We just hope it doesn't lose money. For the Indian Hills golf courses or the Champion Runs or the other courses around, they have to be competitively priced or nobody's going to come to them. So therefore, they have to reduce the price that they have to charge in order to be competitive with the government. So therefore, I think the government's actually hindering the potential for private sector to do business as they normally would. I mean, skating rink's a perfect example. We've got a skating rink in Murfreesboro. It does charge a small fee to come in and skate, but if we build a skate park, then I think we're going directly in competition with the private sector, and the last thing I want to do is to have the government putting small businesses or any business out of business because the government decided to take the responsibility on. The plan that you presented, it's a really good plan. The only thing about Murfreesboro is right now is I know we keep referring to it as a Western Park, and I guess it's almost a park that's on the other side of the interstate. And certainly in Murfreesboro, we don't have a other side of the tracks, I hope. I think, you know, we've got both sides of the interstate, but I don't know if one claims to be better than the other side. And we've got a park facility that's a very nice park facility on the southwestern side of the interstate with Barfield Park. We've got on the north side, we've obviously got Patterson Park, and on the other side of the interstate, we've got Patterson Park and Sportscom and McKnight Fields. But we're also closing down parks and saying we don't have enough parks. And I'll use Oakland Park, for example. We just shut down 2 baseball fields over there. And I guess the plan is that this will help offset that. But if we're really concerned about the number of fields, you know, the soccer fields or / football fields that we have out by the airport, we've got to quit giving those properties away just so we can say, well, we need more on the other side. And I know there's troubles with a growing city. We are a growing city, and we're trying to supply everybody with the facilities that they need. I'm more concerned about the youth recreation than I am the adult recreation, because I think by the time you become an adult, you've got generally the means to provide yourself with recreation, whether it be just walking around your neighborhood or whether it be going to one of the facilities that we have in town here in the private sector that people go and work out at. And it's good that the Parks and Rec does that, but there is that competition thing, and I don't want our government to be the biggest adversary of the private sector when they're trying to conduct their business as well. So, having said all that, I'll be quiet.
Tim,
thank you.
What were your comments?
In the interest of everybody's time, I'll keep it brief. I've got a question, comment, and then I want to make a motion. The question is regarding back to the contract with Kimberly Horn, Task 3 additional services as identified. What are the hourly rates? Because it appears to me, if you look at Task 1 and 2, it's very brief of the amount of services that they're going to perform, and it could possibly be that there's a lot that goes into additional meetings and additional conceptual plans, et cetera. So, Lanny, what's the hourly rate on their service?
Well, sir, I didn't bring those with me. That's part of the attachment to the contract. I wished I had them so I could answer. The anticipated rate, we got it here. They list professional, senior professional, principal, senior professional, production team, administrative clerk. Goes from 165 to 185 per hour down to $45 to $60 an hour. And again, what that would be based on, if you look at the contract, what it says a lump sum. So what we always ask for, Mr. Tips, is when they turn in the next proposal to give us an hourly rate, because there may be an extra meeting that we want them to go to or something, but we always say not to exceed a certain amount. So that's why we ask them to not to exceed or a lump sum, so we know that everything that we're asking for is going to be within that price.
Well, based on your past experiences, what do you think the price tag could ultimately, the expected case, be for their services on this proposal?
It depends, again, Mr. Tips, kind of depends on what they would do. I guess Mr. Code is here. We could probably get him to come up and say, if I did this, how much I could estimate that to be. But it depends on the size of the property, the acreage. If you're doing an environmental study that Mr. Maloney would be involved with, then that's one rate. And again, he's going to consider what environmental conditions that you're asking for, and he'll price those appropriately. We see these rates. We think they're competitive within the market. So, and we always sit down and negotiate and try to get it to where it's as lean as it can possibly be, but still get the services that we need to make whatever determination that we need.
I guess a question or comment that I have, I hear what our esteemed councilmen are saying from their vantage point, from their viewpoints and beliefs. I think that we're at a point in time, we've gone through the last 5 years of a pretty severe economic downturn. I can say that of one thing, though, but underneath everything is the land, and they're not making any more of it. And I think that we are all, in whatever our positions are in trying to represent the people of this great city, I think it calls for us to take some long-term views sometimes. I think it calls for us to be proactive and to have some foresight. And, I don't know when the last time we actually had a property tax increase in this city.
About 14 years ago.
14 years, thank you, Eddie. So 14 years without a tax increase in a city of this for what we're doing. I think that goes to show the leadership we've had in the city for a long time have made some great decisions, And I think we're at a point now that we need to make those great decisions again. And we already see what's happening with that area. It's no secret how much growth we've had west of I-24 and that it's going to continue. And that the fact of the matter is the land will not get any cheaper than it is now. And I understand we don't have the money for that, but if we don't take the first step and at least start studying and start planning, I think we're making a mistake. And with that, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend to council acceptance of this contract going forward.
Well, before we second that, he just said what I was thinking. I had saved I always wanted a deer cabin, a place to hunt. A lot of y'all heard me talk about this place I have, but I literally looked for 10 years. I couldn't find anything. And when that recession hit, there was my opportunity. I found some land at auction up in the mountains, dirt cheap. And so what I'm thinking in a very common sense way, coming off a recession, it may not get any cheaper. And this may be the time to at least look at securing some land, and whether what gets built on it, if it takes 5 years, 6 years, whatever, that's another phase to it. But now is time to, I think, be a little visionary in our thinking and take a look at it. And so if you'll make that motion, I'll second it.
Thanks, guys. Before we vote, I want to take liberty as chairman and make a couple of comments. First of all, I greatly appreciate what you guys are saying. I appreciate that you are being good stewards with our tax dollars. That's why you're elected officials. That's what we try to do as a commission for the recommendations that we take to you. So I greatly appreciate that.
And I want to second that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate your comments. But, it kind of piggybacks on what these two gentlemen said. I've had the privilege of serving on this commission for almost 20 years. And so I've seen a lot of these parks, and I know how long they take to develop. And I know and I greatly appreciate, you guys have heard me say before about the appreciation I have for our city fathers over the generations that have preserved and improved upon the quality of life that we enjoy here. Because make no mistake about it, our community is growing because it is an attractive place to live with a extremely high quality of life. That's why people want to live here. And it's because of the things that we've done in the past that we're in that position today. And this, like Tim alluded to, is one of those times where I think it's going to take some vision. It's going to be difficult financially, no doubt about it. But I do agree in the timing. But one of the things I don't want lost in all of this, one of the things that is absolutely indisputable with regards to many of the park facilities that we have constructed is that they are major revenue sources and tax dollars for this community. While they may not generate direct revenues, there are many, many, many multi-million-dollar events that add to the bottom line that allow lots of other budgetary things to happen that would not happen had we not made the investment in those facilities. And we could list off a whole long list of them. You guys know what they are. I don't have to do it. But I don't think we can ever lose sight of that, in that, this is not only these types of things are not only an investment in our quality of life, they're an investment in our community and tax dollars. So with that said, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Being none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
So moved. Thank you all for your input. It's greatly appreciated.
Very much.
I appreciate all of it. We'll move now quickly. Ron Steed's up. He's going to give us a very quick update of the Patterson programming.
Good afternoon,
Ron,
Mr.
welcome,
Chairman.
man. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon to the members of the council as well. I will be very quick. I wanted to give you a very quick update and summary on events that we had in the past week and what we'll have coming up in the next couple of months. I want to talk about the spring breakaway camp that we did for the spring break for the youth, April 1st through 4th. That camp was for school-aged children up to 7th grade. And that camp is put on in collaboration with, First Shot Basketball. During that time, we hire 5 junior counselors. We take them through an actual interview process, and those 5 counselors that we were able to hire were based on their leadership qualities that they've shown around the center and their interview skills. Their primary duties for that camp was to transport our youth kids to each station and to monitor their overall behavior and to communicate with staff on any behavioral issues. Each day at the conclusion of camp, we talked with those junior counselors and talked about the challenges they face during the day and how we can correct those for the next days. The actual camp itself started with us feeding the youth lunch. The camp consisted of 5 stations. We started off with a large session with all the youth, and they went through a course through the gang resistance education and training officers that are placed in the school system. The GREAT program is actually intended as an immunization against delinquency, youth violence, and gang membership for children in the years immediately before prime ages for introduction into gangs and delinquent behavior. Additional stations that we have for the youth were dance, music, reading, and basketball. And they absolutely enjoyed that camp. The staff actually really enjoys it as well because it gives us an opportunity to teach the older youth, the junior counselors, some skills that they can take into their first jobs, and they can actually add this volunteer information onto their resumes. So we're really excited about that program that we've done 3 years now with First Shot. I'll move on to our Hispanic marketplace. As we continue to try to engage the Hispanic community over at Patterson, we will offer a marketplace event that'll be this Friday from 5:30 p.m. until 7:30 p.m. on the shared lawn between Bradley School and Patterson Community Center. On the Bradley property, there'll be some vendor tables that'll include native foods, crafts, Hispanic artifacts, and art exhibit tables. On our Patterson patio, we'll have about 12 community agencies to come out and give their support to that community and to answer any questions that they may have for those particular agencies that are being placed. Additionally, we'll give guided tours of the Patterson Center. During that time, we'll have some Spanish-speaking volunteers from MTSU actually tell or shadow our staff members around our community center, and we will actually give out financial assistance forms that have been translated over into Spanish and program brochures that have also been translated into Spanish for those community members. Between those 2 areas, we'll have a moon bounce, we'll have a stage set up to play some native Hispanic music. They'll do some salsa dance, so it will be an absolute fiesta. We have advertised through the Parent Magazine, City Schools website, Latino radio station. I'm going to test my Spanish here. Sabrosita is the name of the radio station that we've advertised through, as well as WGNS Radio, and the school will do an all-call to parents to get them out to that event. So we look forward to Friday. And coming up on May 18th, 11 a.m. till 4 p.m. over at Patterson, we will have the Summer Family Affair. The day is to celebrate the coming of summer weather and months, to enjoy time with family in a grand way. We will have food, field day activities, face painting, drawing surprises, bounces, and a lot of agency support on that event as well. We are putting together a survey that will gather information regarding our community's general outlook on their neighborhoods and programs that we can offer in the future to better serve them. Also during that time, the Murfreesboro RISE group has rented our facility space. RISE actually being an acronym for Reach, Instruct, Serve, and Empower. They will be renting our facility space, and they will actually have a conference that addresses some of the topics that affect families during that time, such as mentoring boys to men, girls to women, single parenting, parenting children with disabilities, graduating from college and transitioning to careers, and debt management and personal finances. And they have agreed to collaborate with our event and offer those seminars free to our community members. So we are extremely excited about the coming events, and we hope to see your faces. Can I answer any questions?
Questions for Ron?
Just a comment. having been a part of some of those activities in the past and looking forward to the marketplace, I want to thank you for your continuing partnership with Murfreesboro City Schools. It's been a great partnership. Really excited to see the expansion that we've had.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ron? Ron, you guys are doing good work. Keep it up.
Very much.
Thanks,
Thank you for
bud.
your time.
Becky, you're up for your quick update.
Good afternoon, and I will make it very quick. First, we have the Mayor's Walk, which is a free event for everybody to come on out, meet our local officials. The first one, well, not the first one, but we have this Saturday, April 13th at 8 a.m. or at McKnight Park, or you can come at 11 a.m. at Siegel Park. Then summer camp registration. Summer is around the corner. It's 80 degrees today, so everybody may be thinking about summer. Sign up now. We take sign-ups until camp either starts or they become full. Biking 101, this is a new program we have. It does bike basics and short bike rides. It's for all ages, and it's Thursday, April 18th. They have it at 9 a.m. and then again at 6 p.m., whichever one's more convenient for you at Sportscom. And Jennifer Joins is the contact person for that at Sportscom. We have the 37th Annual Pioneer Days at Cannonsburg Village. This is a very popular event that they have every year with a wide variety of cloggers, old-time music, demonstrations. That is Saturday, April 27th from 10 to 5 at Cannonsburg, and that is free as well, unless you make any purchases at the vendors. Also, I was asked to announce really quick that the middle half or the Murfreesboro Half Marathon is October 12th, and registration starts June 1st at 8 a.m., so we expect that to fill up very quickly. And we also have, through Parks and Rec with Jennifer Joins at Sportscom, a beginner half marathon training program. So for all those programs that I quickly sped through, you can find more information in our Rec Connection or at our website at murfreesborotn.gov/parks, or check out our Facebook pages. Thank you. Any questions? No problem.
Thanks for being here. Is there any other business to come before the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Chair.
I have one item.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
As we've already seen from the RFP about some of our surveys of needs and all, one thing that's come to my attention is that we're at a point that with our tennis courts at Old Fort Park, we have, I think, 28 courts there, which the surveys would show that we're already 26 short of what we should probably have. And of those 28, 8 of those still are unlighted.
24.
And we've got a huge amount of activity that goes on out there. And I don't know whether it's in the budget yet or what the status of it is, but I would like for this commission to recommend that we try to find the money to go ahead and get those remaining 8 courts lit as soon as we possibly could.
Thanks, Tim. Y'all work on that?
We will. I'll talk to city administration and we can look at that. Mr. Chair, what I had is we recently lost one of our longtime commission members,
Yeah, thank
Ms.
you for bringing
Elsie
that up.
Easter. She served on this commission for 11 years. She was an absolute dream, a joy to work with. It was a tragic loss. I know the day that she called me and said that she had to be off this commission, it was a sad day for Parks and Recreation and Murfreesboro Parks Commission. So in honor of her, I'd like to ask for just a moment of silence before we close.
It's a great idea, Laney. Thank you. Just remember Elsie. Thank you.
Amen.
She was a great lady. She'll be missed. There are no more business. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
All right.